Live. I am joined by Kansas City Chiefs sports writer, for Sports Illustrated, part of the Inner Circle. You write for Sports Talk 2319, colleague, friend, Jordan Foote. How are you doing?
Max, I'm good, man. We literally right before we jumped on, I was like, man, I think it's only been a couple months, but it feels like it's been years since I've been on the pod just because, man, first of all, you're doing stuff like every single day. And second of all, so much has happened in the world of sports and just in the world in general since last time.
Yeah, no, everything is just kind of magnified with everything that's going on. And I'm trying to do stuff every day. But one thing I've learned is I can't overdo the product. Because then if I oversaturate it, then it gets watered down. And then people just, okay, it's another post. So one thing Rashad taught me was, okay, look, drop 60 points. You have the ability to drop 60 points. You're dropping 30 points. So he's like, make your presence felt when you do it. And I'm like, never thought about it that way. So now I'm trying to do it where, I'm recording maybe every day, or I'm creating content every day, but I have to be strategic on when I post it. I don't know if you come across that same issue, but that's one thing I've been kind of trying to figure out.
A little bit. And like, I'm big on the social media promotion because I think like people, if you're a content creator and you don't share it, you're doing yourself a disservice. Like you can put it on a resume and stuff like that, but you never know who's going to come across that stuff. But in the same breath, like, if you're like, I'm doing that 100 and 100 with the draft for the NFL, like by day 100, people are going to be sick and tired of that stuff. They're going to be like, oh my God, this dude is coming back again. So I try to like space out the times that I posted at so I catch a different audience. I try to do NBA stuff on these days or whatever. So, man, it's definitely, it's not an exact science, but there's something to it.
Now, we're going to talk a lot of NFL. Obviously, March Madness is coming up. I do have one thing with LeBron, of course, but before we even get into that, kind of everything that we're talking about with social media, we talked a little bit about it off air, and I just like where the conversation was going. And so I think the audience listening, especially people who listen to podcasts, they'll understand this. How big, and I speak to a lot of guests about this, but let me ask you, how big do you think podcasting will get? I think I lost you there.
There we go. Now we're back.
I'm not sure what that was. Okay, we're back. What I was saying was, how big do you think podcasting can get or will get? Do you think it will take over everything? Will it all of a sudden become so oversaturated because so many people do it? Will there be something new like how TikTok is to Instagram and Twitter? What do you think the direction that everything is going in?
Man, I think it's still early in like that type of realm. Like YouTube kind of had its phase, but like now everything's interconnected. Like the podcast will go on Twitter. The Twitter will link you to like a link tree where you can be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. The YouTube will link you to someone else's podcast where their podcast, they know a graphic designer that works here, that he's on someone else's podcast. And it's like this interconnected web of stuff that's going on. And man, I think it's just scratching the surface. Like we mentioned Colin Cowherd, big ups to Colin for starting the volume and all that stuff. Like he recognized that there's value in that right now and that having a network of podcasts and a network of people is huge. It's only going to get bigger. Like we live in a generation, us as 22, 23-year-old kids, we want information now. Like we want it ASAP. We want to be able to hear it because we don't want to read it. And if you're doing writing but not podcasting or radio but not writing, like you have to be multifaceted, I think. And really podcasting is like a good bridge for all of that.
Right. And I spoke to Darnell, who's on Speak for Yourself. And we talked about the direction it's heading in. It's just so much more content and knowledge is available. And so for someone such as you and I, who are young broadcasters in the business, and we're trying to reach a certain level, why in the world would we not listen to the Colin Cowards, the Joe Rogans, the Chris Broussards every single day? Because then we have to make the same mistakes, or we can learn. It's almost like a free tutorial without them actually having to sit down with you. So why would I not do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like if you're not watching what the big dogs are doing, and like pretty much everyone you talk to who has been somewhere and like tries to come back and talk to younger people, the number one thing they say is, I'm doing this so you can shave time off of your journey. It can be easier for you, stuff like that. Like if you're not watching that, then it's going to take you just as long, or you're going to hit those same roadblocks and obstacles and stuff like that. So I think man, with the podcasting realm, like you mentioned saturation and like everyone wants to be a podcaster and all that stuff, and that's fantastic. But also, I think only the good ones will make it. Like the ones that you can put out as many episodes as you want, but if it's not good, then there's a trade-off somewhere. But also, if you're putting out one banger of a podcast every month, I mean, there has to be a balance there. And I think that the best ones, they have the balance of time and quantity. They have guests like your podcast. You have the guests, you have the different sports that you cover, you have different backgrounds of the people that come on, you have the personality. Like, man, it's hard to do, I think, but the good ones, they're going to truly take off soon.
I appreciate that. Now, before we get into the NFL and everything, I do have one more like real world application type question. With everything that goes on, and obviously what happened last year, I try not to get into politics. Like, that's just not my. But it just has to do with what we're talking about. How you have this news station covers this news station covers this, and it was just a lot of conflict about where you're getting your information from. Do you think that it's possible that podcasts or the way that we consume information is going to change drastically, not even in just sports, but in the real world? Like maybe this applies over to that. And so from now on, the way we do presidential elections or the way that we watch news, the way that world events happen is no longer going to be processed through the news. Maybe it will be through the way we're doing it now.
I think that individualism is going to be big. Like a Cowherd, like a Stephen A. Smith, like those, like a Chris Haynes or a Shams or a Woj, like those independent reporters who they still have that umbrella of being under the network or the company or whatever, but they transcend almost like the company itself. Like when you think of Woj, you don't really think of ESPN. Right. But when you think of ESPN, you think of Woj, which that's not how it's supposed to be. Or you think of Stephen A. Smith, but you don't think of Stephen A. Smith and then ESPN. It's the other way around. Or like Cowherd and Fox, Shannon and Skip and stuff like that. Like these larger than life personalities you get your information and entertainment from. I think that anyone can make a Twitter account, anyone can make videos, anyone can make podcasts. Like how you get that information, I think will still come from the organization itself, but you'll kind of find like that niche audience with a specific person or group of people or whatever.
Right. That's very interesting. That was a great point, because when I do think of Woj, I don't think of ESPN. But when I think of ESPN, I think of Woj. That's interesting. That was well put. That was very well put. So let's dive into the NFL now. You are a guru when it comes to the NFL. We nailed a lot of the picks on the postseason, and I can't wait to do that. I want to do it weekly with you this upcoming season when things are a little bit more back to normal. It'll be easier for us. A lot has happened. So before we get into specifics, let's go into your Chiefs. Talk to me about your Chiefs offseason. What are some things that you like? Have they nailed it? Some things maybe you don't understand or you're questioning a little bit. What's going on with your Chiefs?
Yeah, man, I think that I don't know if we did a Super Bowl picks episode. We might have, but I was going to say either way, like on the list of outcomes for the game, it was going to be Chiefs blowout, Buccaneers close win, or Chiefs close win. Like Buccaneers blowout just wasn't on the list of stuff. Like I figured you can't blow out Patrick Mahomes. And he looked helpless, and the dude was doing all that he could. I mean, he played about as well as he could have played, but man, the offensive line, like you had third stringers everywhere. You had backup right tackles playing left guard. You had your right guard playing left tackle. Like it was just a horrible experience. I think for football fans too, because now someone watching Patrick Mahomes for the first time thinks that dude sucks, or the Chiefs should never be back in the Super Bowl, or the Buccaneers are like this unstoppable giant or whatever. When in reality, the Chiefs had like 5, 6, 7 linemen that were out, and that's just caught up to him because you have Shaq Barrett, JPP, and all those guys. So, man, retooling that offensive line was huge for them. They're getting a couple guys that opted out back. They cut both of their tackles. They signed Joe Thuney from New England, who's top 5 guard in the league. Like that's a really big deal. And then right before we hopped on, they signed Kyle Long, who was a Pro Bowler with the Bears. So they're set on the inside. Niang is coming back at right tackle, so I think if they can get a left tackle man and then figure out what they're going to do at wide receiver because Sammy Watkins is gone, I think they'll be back in business.
What's interesting about the Chiefs is they're in rare territory. Like there's been teams that win a Super Bowl that we don't call dynasty.
Yeah.
And The Chiefs won one Super Bowl, but they have dynasty written on them. So the expectations are set so high for them. So now it's Super Bowl or bust every year. We understand how hard it is to win a championship, and there's very few dynasties, not only in the NFL, but in sports. Do you think it was too premature, or do you still think that's okay to call this a dynasty in the making?
I think that it was a little premature. Like, you have to win probably 2 in a row before that can happen. But like everyone has always said, if any team had the best chance to do it, and still probably has the best chance to do it, it's the Chiefs. Like, they have the coach, they have the GM, the exec staff, they have Kelsey, Mahomes, Hill, Matthew. Like, the core is there. It's not like, I'm trying to think. Oh, the Jaguars. Like, when they went to the AFC Championship and played New England really close, and they had Blake Bortles at quarterback, and the commentator was like, oh, this team will be back right here. Like, no, they won't. Or like the Tennessee Titans when they played the Chiefs. Oh, this team will be right back here. Like, no, they won't. Or
no, they won't.
even San Francisco in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Oh, this team will be in the Super Bowl for years to come. Like, I don't know about that. Like, I believe people when they say the Chiefs will be back. Like, it's hard to get back to the Super Bowl, but I think they have the best chance to do it.
Now, they released the odds like right after the Super Bowl. They always do that way too early, like Super Bowl odds for next year. And I think the Chiefs were the favorite. I could be wrong. I don't know if things change now considering what the Bucs have done. But it seems like it's the Chiefs, it's the Bucs, and now it seems like they've separated themselves from other. Am I crazy, or do you think it's those two teams clearly?
I think so, man. Like, I'm a huge Matthew Stafford guy, and I think the Rams had a Super Bowl caliber roster, but man, he hasn't won a playoff game. Like, you can't pick them to get to the Super Bowl with a dude that hasn't done it and is in his like 11th year or whatever. So that'll be a wild card, I think, like an X factor in the NFC. Green Bay, obviously, but they drafted a quarterback and a running back last year, and then Aaron Rodgers won MVP and they re-signed Aaron Jones. So like, they didn't do anything to improve that team. So they're in the mix. New Orleans with Jameis, man, I think they're going to fall off. Like, not to be horrible, but I don't think they're a deep playoff type team. So AFC, Lamar, I guess the Ravens are always going to be in there. The Bills are going to be good again. The Colts with Carson Wentz, like, I don't think they're going to be good, but on the off chance that happens, like, there's going to be competition. But like you said, the only two certainties, I think, are that the Chiefs are going to be really good and the Bucs are going to be really good, and that's about it.
It feels like the Cavs-Warriors, like early matchup. It's like going back to the finals. You knew it was LeBron James or like the Pat Mahomes, and then you know that the Warriors team, with what the Chiefs are doing, what the Bucs are doing, they just kind of loaded up where you're like, okay, these two teams are separating themselves. Yeah, other teams had really good regular seasons. Yes, other teams acquired different stars. But at the end of the day, we knew it was going to be the Cavs. We knew it was going to be the Warriors. Starting to get that feeling a little bit when it comes to the Bucs and the Chiefs. Let's transition into the Bucs. But you actually mentioned this on your Twitter. And Patrick Mahomes did the same thing. And I think it's such an underrated quality that doesn't get talked about enough is the pay cuts. Tom Brady's done this whole career. And like, you think of the ability, the throws, the accuracy, the arm, the mobility, the playmaking, but just small things, small, smart decisions like taking pay cuts goes such a long way and clearly shows he has 7 Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes did the same similar thing to give the Chiefs cap relief, correct? Yeah,
and man, people bring up the contract that he signed. Like, when he signed it and it was $500 million or whatever, I put something out like, this is a team-friendly deal. And everyone was like, how the hell can that be team-friendly when the dude's getting $500 million? And I'm like, they structured it on purpose to where they can revisit that contract at the end of every season and create cap space. And they're like, how do you even do that? And I was like, I don't really know the numbers behind it, but just wait. And then sure enough, like, I think they got $17 million out of the deal. So he's still getting that money, but he's kind of doing like Tom Brady where they can convert it to a bonus or whatever. He gets the money up front. And I just found this out the other day, like how that works with signing bonuses and stuff. It comes out of the team's actual like fund. So like the owner will pay that money up front. So if the owner is loaded and can afford to do that, they can do it with every player they wanted to. So I don't know how the owner will feel about paying like $20 million a year directly to his quarterback, but I think if they're winning, that it'll be okay.
Right. The Bucs, they kept a lot. Now I think a lot of people were not taking. I wouldn't say thinking it was a joke, but I don't know how serious we took the the Bucks when the coach is up there like, oh, we're going to get the same team right back. And it kind of seems like they did that. They acquired a lot of who they came with and won the Super Bowl with. Are you impressed with what the Bucks have been able to do, acquiring the people that they've acquired and still being aggressive?
Yeah, for sure, man. Because like the Chiefs tried that whole run it back thing and they brought back like 18 out of the 22 starters after opt-outs. So I'm not going to count out Tom Brady. I've learned enough times. You can't count that dude out. He's just different. And Bruce Arians is a good coach. They're bringing back the same team. So, man, it's one of those things where, like, I think it's really hard to be locked in for another year, which is also why I wouldn't necessarily pencil in the Chiefs for a Super Bowl. Like, they had, in Mahomes' first few years, AFC Championship, Super Bowl. Those are deep playoff runs and long seasons, so it's hard to do. But, man, like, if any dude can get you fired up and locked in every week, it's going to be Tom Brady. Like, they have a good shot to get back there again.
Absolutely. Now, you have to think Bill Belichick and Tom. I try not to get too in-depth with it because I don't know their relationship. No one really does. But given the information we've given, they're both highly competitive. You know Bill sees that, and he's not going, oh, I'm so happy for Tom. Do you think that has to do with how aggressive he's been in the offseason? Okay, Tom, you just won this Super Bowl. Look what I'm about to do. So he brings back Cam, and all the aggressive signings that he's done actually hasn't been out of character for them because they're team-friendly deals. Have you been impressed with what Bill's been able to do?
Man, it's been crazy. Like Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, like they're getting Chung and I think like Hightower or somebody back from opt-outs. Like, man, they're going to be legit. And I don't think legit as in like Super Bowl contender, but is it fair to expect them to make the playoffs? I think so. Like they won 7 games when Cam had COVID. Edelman was hurt for almost all the season. They had N'Keal Harry, and that was about it at wide receiver. They had no tight ends that were effective. Like the offensive line was bad. So to expect them to win 2 or 3 more games with all of that, I think is fair. So Bill means business, and I think that he was heard the noise. Not that he's on social media or anything. He probably doesn't really care about that stuff. Yeah. But, man, to hear all the criticism and then to see Tom go out and do that stuff, I think he's putting them in a better position to do good this year.
Right. And quarterbacks typically, like when I always say look at the history of the game, when you look at the history, second-year quarterbacks typically do better if they're in the system. So I think Cam will do better, and I do think they'll make the playoffs. I talked about this NFL free agency, like this offseason has been a little bit different. You're getting a lot more noise, quarterbacks moving, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson. What have you made of the Russell Wilson situation? Because this is very out of character. He's the type of go Seahawks type of guy. And now him and Pete Carroll's kind of business is just out in front of everybody. Obviously, Pete Carroll doesn't like that. What have you made of that whole situation? Are you surprised by how Russell approached this situation? And now it looks like he's not going to be traded. What have you made of this whole situation with the Seahawks?
I don't want to compare the two guys because I think Russ is just a different dude. Like, he's such a nice guy. And not to say this other guy isn't, because I love him. It kind of reminds me of Aaron Rodgers with Mike McCarthy there down the stretch. Like, getting tired of your head coach. And I think there's a great deal in that. Like, obviously, like you said with Tom and Bill, you don't want to comment on their relationship or what happens behind closed doors or whatever, but he seems upset, obviously. They aren't protecting him. The dude gets hit all the time. He's a dude. Russ Wilson wants to play till he's like 45. He wants to be like Tom Brady. So if he keeps getting hit like that, one of the reasons Brady's still going, he had that one ACL injury. Otherwise, the dude's been healthy. They've protected him. They've kept him clean. It's a lot easier to do that, I think, with a guy who isn't going to step into those hits like a Russell Wilson type dude. But man, it's interesting. I think that the Bears put up, I think it was 3 first-round picks and then I think a running back and a really good defense. Like, they put up 2 starters and 3 firsts for Russell Wilson, and the Seahawks were like, no. So they clearly want to keep him, which is interesting. He's a top 3 quarterback probably, so I don't blame them, but it's just hard. We don't see these types of superstar quarterbacks demanding trades and stuff like that very often. It's kind of like an NBA type thing that's pushed over, and I'm all power to the player. I think that the players should be able to, because like you see on Twitter, oh, they're locked into a contract, they have to value that. The teams don't care about the contract. Then when they cut a player, it's a different story. It's, oh, well, they can do what they want. They're in charge. So I think the players should be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, Draymond said it perfectly. And that's such an interesting point you brought up. I was about to say, it reminds me of now the NBA business model and the NFL business model are completely different.
Yeah.
I understand. But when LeBron James, like, you know what? I want to bring in Kevin Love. I think Kyrie and I can coexist. I want to bring Kevin Love. Give me J.R. Smith. Give me Tristan Thompson. I like Tristan Thompson. Give me an Iman Shumpert. Give me guys I know I can work with and trust, a Shane Battier, a Mike Miller. And now it's almost like it's transferred over to the NFL a little bit where Tom is like, give me this guy. I want Brown. Give me Antonio Brown. And then when a player like a Russell Wilson sees that, he's like, okay, he just called his own shots and won a Super Bowl. I want to do that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start to see a little bit more of that. Maybe not all the time, but when a player like a Russell Wilson of that caliber has a little bit of leverage, hey, I want to say something. And I think we may start to see a little bit more of that.
And you see the two polar opposites with Mahomes and Watson. You see Mahomes who said, I want a running back in the first round. And the team was like, all right, whatever, you got it. I want this offensive lineman. I want this offensive lineman. I want this receiver. They're like, okay, bam, bam, bam. Then you see Deshaun Watson. I just want to keep DeAndre Hopkins. Nope, we're going to trade him for a bag of chips. Like, I want to keep my running backs. Nope, we're going to trade them. I want an offensive line. Nope, can't do it. And then he wants out because he is a blue chip player who's young and sees all these guys saying, if I want to be one of the best, I have to win some rings, and I'm not even going to make the playoffs here, really. So I don't blame him one bit. I think it shows the true colors of the organization that they get mad when stuff like that happens, and the players should have just as much power as the team. Like, I understand you're an employee, but when the employee is disposable and can be released at the drop of a hat or traded for a bag of chips or peanuts or whatever, they should be able to stick up for themselves too.
Agree. Absolutely agree. I want to talk about the Bears. So we're talking about Russell Wilson, and I thought it was such a – oh, God. And I know you feel the same way here.
Yeah.
You go from Russell Wilson and the interest, and hey, there's a strong possibility we're going to do everything we can to get Russell Wilson, who's a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the league, and you get Andy Dalton. Like, what kind of message is that sending to your locker room? What kind of message is that sending to your fans? Like, what can Bear fans really have hope for right now? Because that is just not – I don't see the fit at all.
And Allen Robinson had just re-signed with them, and like, I bet he was excited they were going to get a quarterback. And I don't know if they downgraded, but they might have downgraded from Trubisky to, like, neither one of them are good. I mean, is Dalton even better than Nick Foles? Like,
I don't know.
And they gave him, like, wasn't it $10 million?
Yeah, it just does not make sense with anything when you go across the board. And it's like, you needed a playmaker, and you have the Deshaun. Okay, maybe you couldn't get Deshaun Watson. I'm a little higher on Sam Darnold than others, but if you have your doubt, okay. We all know they made a mistake. Deshaun Watson should have been drafted there. They went with Mitchell Trubisky. It's like, okay, you made a mistake. It happens. But it's like they just keep digging a deeper hole. It's like they're not making up for it at all. It just keeps getting worse. Like, is it the front? Obviously, it's the front office, but what's the direction of this team?
I think they're going the wrong way. Like, 2 years ago, it was they have all the pieces except for a quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Or it was even like, that defense is so good that if they can get into the playoffs, they can win a couple games. Then it was, well, they have all the pieces, but I don't think they're good enough to carry a okay quarterback to a Super Bowl. They need a really good quarterback. Then it was, they need an elite quarterback just to be a playoff team and go from there. Now it's, our players are getting older. We're losing them. They don't want to be here. Our coaching staff isn't that good. We're losing the trust of our fans. Like, until they could, like, a Russell Wilson would have covered up for a lot of stuff, because they would have Allen Robinson, they would have Cohen unless they traded him, they'd have Khalil Mack unless they trade, like, stuff like that. They would have a team. Now they're losing, I think, Kyle Fuller, their corner. I don't think Khalil Mack would be very happy long term. I don't know how his contract situation looks. You have guys' names being thrown around in trade rumors, which is never good. Allen Robinson just came back, and now he's going to have Andy Dalton throwing to him. Like, I'm glad I'm not a Bears fan. I'm glad I don't cover the Bears, because both are probably pretty depressing jobs. Yeah,
and the last thing you want to do is lose the locker room. And it's like they're starting to lose the locker room. Before we get into March Madness talk, Jordan, I appreciate you coming on the show and giving me your time. Jordan Foote, talk about Drew Brees. He retires, all-time
Yeah.
great. I know some people are like, is he a top 10 ever? Oh, he's absolutely a top 10 ever. He's not a top 10 ever. Wherever you place him in your rankings, I don't think anyone can argue what he's been able to do, what he's been able to accomplish, the records, and then the way he's been able to overcome so many different obstacles. What do you make of Drew Brees, his legacy? And I guess I'll ask the generic question this one time. Where do you place him all time?
I'll start off with the ranking, I guess, because like I hate ranking guys. Like
Yeah.
it
You don't
seems
even
like
let me not become a victim of that.
I respect it.
Yeah, you don't even have to rank him all time. If you don't think he's all top 10 all time, cool. If you do, you don't. Either way, we all know he's great. So
Yeah.
let me just ask you then, what do you make of Drew Brees in his career?
Yeah. I will say he's top 10. Then I don't have to single out guys or anything. I'll leave it at that. He's one of the 10 best. He's a legend, all that stuff. So man, like the thing with rankings is, before I move on, like it's like you're praising one player at the expense of another player. And we do it. The number one thing I see is top fives for just players in general, because then you're snubbing somebody and then a fan gets mad because, oh, this guy's top five. Well, maybe you had him like in a 5 to 7 range. You just couldn't make up your mind. Like, that's okay. But young players in the NBA on Twitter, young player plus NBA Twitter equals absolutely insane. Like, you have people with the player picture is greater than player picture. And it starts an argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the number one way to start an argument, by like ranking someone above someone or whatever. Like, you can have tiers, I guess. That's better, but it's still not great. Just call them both good or both great. And like, there's no way to prove that one player would be a better fit in this system than another if they're on the same level. Like, I'm not even going to do it. Yeah, no, I was about to do one of those situations and say like a Donovan Mitchell and a CJ McCollum. Like, they get compared all the time. There's no way to prove how Donovan and Dame would work, or Mike Conley and CJ, or like a Booker and Mitchell, or a LeBron and Durant. Like, let's just appreciate these guys for what they are, or Kawhi and a Giannis, or a Steph and whoever, Steph and Dame. Like, just stop ranking them. They're all fantastic. They're all different players. They all play on different teams. Like, it's tiring. And I used to be that guy. Like, I used to always have to have a definitive ranking for everything. But now I'm just like, it's just the sport. Like, just appreciate the sport and appreciate the player.
Situation and fit mean everything. And so it's not necessarily even like you said, who's better, what's their situation, who's around them, who's the coach, who's the front office, what's the location. And people are like, what do you mean, what's the location? Like, you can't tell me if you live in Toronto, that's not different than living in the United States. Like, that's different. That affects your everyday life, which could affect the way you play if you don't get enough sleep, or what you're comfortable with. So to your point, I think what happened was sports got so big and sports talk shows got so big and so popular, and that obviously drove the ratings and the clicks, because you get people who are outraged who click in. There's no way he just said this. But I think there's a new wave coming in, and Pierre and I talk about this all the time from House of Highlights. It's like you, myself, Pierre, like these younger guys who clearly know what we want to do, and we're starting to get that platform. We're starting to kind of change the narrative, and there's obviously pushback coming back. But I think the way you and I are covering it and the way Pierre covers it is starting to become the new way. I can't guarantee it's going to change everything, but I think the way we're obviously the next generation coming up. And so if we kind of change our priorities on what we talk about, I think that will slowly shift the way we look at the game.
Yeah, and I will get back to Drew Brees, but we're on a good roll right now. So, man, it's we're changing how the game is played. Like, where's Steph Curry coming in and making the game more fun and better? And like, it's not, I call it playing the game with the national guys, because a lot of them, like, if I sat down with some of the hot take, like when Max Kellerman said he'd rather have Iguodala take the shot over Steph, like, if you were out to dinner with him and said, like, bro, do you really believe that? He'd probably laugh it off, like, no, I really don't. Like, the game is making hot takes and getting a clippable segment that can be posted on social media that can get the attention of a blue check or a group of fans and circulate it around, because there's no such thing as bad publicity. Like, you were getting eyes on your content. People are going to remember you. They all are good at what they do because they play the game. And like, that's why I like Cowherd so much, because he has segments where he quote unquote plays the game, But the dude also has some fire segments where you're like, that dude knows what he's talking about. And some of them like just play it a little too much. But that's the business. Like in media today, I guess at a greater scale, because like me and you, we don't do that type of stuff, but we're not multi-million-dollar corporation, like keeping up a business, whatever. You have to be able to play the game a little bit. And like, it's just being smart. It's knowing when to pick your spots and stuff like that. Like I hate to say politics because that's not really the word for it, but like organizational politics. Like you have to satisfy the bosses sometimes. You have to do it for the click or for the rating or whatever. But I forget what we were even talking about to start off. Something about rankings and stuff like that.
Yeah, it originated from ranking players, and I was talking about that became a common thing because of the way information was being like handed down big networks. But to your point, at the end of the day, it's a business. And at the end of the day, a business is about making money. So what's going to make money is clicks. So how can we get good clicks? And so it makes sense. And I understand the process behind it. But to your point, I just think there's a new way of doing things.
Yes.
And like Tom Coward, for example, literally has a segment. Okay, look, I'm going to give you bold takes, but this is where I'm right. This is where I'm wrong. And so I think he's one of those guys like, okay, I see the way things are, the direction that it's heading in. I will admit when I'm wrong. Very few people will do that. And so to your point, those are all excellent points. But Drew Brees, that's where we really started at and took you off on a rant. All time, like his impact on the game to you is what? When I say Drew Brees, what's the first couple sentences that come to your mind?
Defying the odds, leadership, impact, like to go from, I think it was like a neck or a back injury or whatever that he had. He had like a 20% chance of ever playing again. They're like, you're probably not going to play. So he defied those odds. You don't have quarterbacks who are so bad at their first stop and then get that second chance and become all-time greats. Like that just doesn't happen. And he went to a new stop. Hurricane Katrina happened. He stepped in. He embraced that city. They embraced him. He was there for the rest of his career, like 15 years. So to say anything bad about Drew Brees, I think is wrong. Like he's a good leader. He's a good guy. Great football player. Obviously, he's definitely going to be missed. And like people bring up, oh, well, he couldn't beat this person, or oh, his record in this, or his stats with this. Like, not everybody is going to get 7 rings, or not everybody is going to win 5 Super Bowls or whatever. Like, if you can get to a Super Bowl, if you can elevate a team and prove that you can command a locker room at the highest level, get them there, win. Like even a Dan Marino who never had a Super Bowl win, one of the 10 best quarterbacks ever, just because you can look at that dude and say he was different. And I think the thing with Drew Brees and even a guy like Tom Brady, Drew Brees was small. Tom Brady never had the athleticism per se. Drew Brees didn't have any of it. He never had the strong arm. He never had the size. He never had the athleticism. That dude was just straight accuracy, guts, leadership, smart, go out there and bust people's you-know-what every Sunday.
Right. No, that's very, very good point. And he just worked extremely hard, had his head on. All good points, Jordan. Anything before we get into transition to March Madness? I know I'm holding you up a little bit. Is there anything else that sticks out to you on the NFL signings? Like for me, Ryan Fitzmagic to Washington was a little bit head scratcher for me. Is there anything else that stands out to you when it comes to NFL signings? What's been going on?
I think the Jaguars were making moves, and like, forgive me, I can't remember really exactly who all they were signing, but I saw like 6 different guys they were bringing in on Tuesday afternoon. And I think that they're fielding calls for Gardner Minshew. Like that team is trying to build on the fly. And I think if they get a player like Trevor Lawrence, they're going to be a little bit better than people think, just because they can retool that roster quick. And like Lawrence, he is probably the most NFL ready guy. So if they start off and get him, they're going to hit the ground running, and I could see them at least being competitive to start off. So they jumped out to me for sure.
And Urban Meyer's a culture changer. Like that's just what so you kind of give that combination with the Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I like that. It's that time. It's March Madness. This is where everyone's filling out their brackets, and then you get people who are like, "Oh, you're not an expert in this, and you don't know this." And so, a couple things that stand out to me. And I'm going to run it by you. Like I was telling you off air, so those listening, I don't want to go through every single matchup. Like I have it pulled up right here. I know a lot of people probably know how many games right off the top of your head. There's just so many games. So I don't want to go through every single game and the Utahs and the Texas Tech and the Arkansas and all that. So what I want to do is some key points that stand out to you, and here are some key things that stand out to me. This is obviously a completely different situation than we've ever been in because of the pandemic. The NBA was affected by it. The NFL was affected by it. Baseball, every sport, the world in general, especially college basketball. So that being said, I think Gonzaga has really separated themselves as the favorite, and rightly so. I think they're the best team in college basketball. I guess let's start with that. Would you say Gonzaga is head and shoulders above everybody?
Man, I don't know. I think that they're really good and they're so well coached that they're a team that they're going to be – people bring up their schedule and the conference they play in every year, and that's fair, I guess, whatever. But if you're number one, you're number one. Like, you're a top dog. You're going to go deep in the tournament. They're always – something about Gonzaga, they're always prepared. Like, they're going to be where they're supposed to be on the court. They're well coached. Those crunch time minutes, they are going to have their place set up. They're going to play good defense. They're going to shoot well. Like, you can't really poke holes in their resume or their team. Like, you can poke holes in their schedule. You can poke holes in the tournament. You can try to do that. But as a team, they're always there every single year. Like, the year that Gonzaga completely falls off and disappears is the year that college basketball is going to be completely different. Because, like, they're always there.
I meant to ask you this, so thank you for reminding me. The way college basketball is different. I think that the college basketball landscape is going to be watered down as time goes on. And I think because you're seeing more and more top high school recruits choose that NBA G League route, I think the G League is going to grow. And college basketball really doesn't get the backing of the NBA the way the NFL supports college football. And so I think that college basketball is slowly starting to not necessarily fade. I will never just completely go away, but it's getting watered down now to the point where I think the product is going to be far less attractive than it's ever been. And we kind of already gotten that because back in the day, you had the 4-year, 3-year players, the Patrick Ewings, the Christian Laettners, and then it kind of transitioned to the one and dones, which are still exciting because you know this guy's going to be a star like a Wiggins. But now I think it's going to get to the point where the G League's really going to, I shouldn't even say devastate, but take away from what's going on with college basketball. Would you agree with that?
I think so, and you see guys like Green and Kuminga who are like going in and playing and doing well, like getting buckets and proving that they can excel at that level and really play. Like, I think that's what it was brought in for. Like, so those kids can see you don't have to be in one and done. You can go make money. You can prove that. The thing with the G League is it's not a bunch of college kids who most of them won't play in the NBA. They're just doing it because they're good. The G League dudes are playing for their lives. Like, they're playing for their livelihood. They're playing for future jobs. They never know who's watching them. They have NBA prospects, like, to go play. So It's a grown man's league. Like, people talk down on the G League. It's a grown man's league. All those guys are scrapping. It's almost like playing in Europe. Like, those guys are just straight up hooping, playing hard. So if those guys, they're hungry. So if you can prove you can do it in the G League, I think it'll help. So it's kind of like carving that, almost like an alternate path, really, and I think that's what it was invented for.
And a dark horse for me is Cade. I think Cade Cunningham's the best player in shouldn't just say dark horse is Cade, Oklahoma State, but Cade Cunningham specifically, I think is the best basketball player in college. And ever since Rashad's he's like Grant Hill. I'm like, oh, wow, he really is. He's just so smooth. He can do a little bit of everything. What are your thoughts on Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State?
Okay, I was looking at my bracket, bro, and this is going to knock your socks off. I have Oklahoma State in the Final Four with Cade Cunningham.
Really?
As the number 4 seed, I had them upsetting Houston the round before. So I have them, man. I'm all in on Cade. And
I wouldn't be surprised.
Bro, I made some bold picks in my bracket.
So I haven't filled mine out completely yet. So you have a winner.
Yes. I had the Zags winning it all. I just think that they're that prepared. They're that good. I have a 5-4 on the right side of the bracket. I have Villanova and Oklahoma State. And Villanova's another team, like, they're a 5 seed this year. People are down on them. They are so well coached and so well prepared that they are a team that could struggle through the entire regular season, and then come tournament time, I'm telling you, like, during the COVID year, the tournament's going to be complete, like, everything's 0-0. And it's a cliche, but it really is. Every team 0-0, and the best coach teams, the best veteran teams are going to do well, I think.
This is our first disagreement. think very similarly about a lot of different things. This is our first disagreement. Because of injuries, I think Villanova is going to get shocked early.
That's fair. I could see it. Like I made some really bold takes in my bracket this year because I usually just stick to my guns and kind of go with the flow. But I tried to be bold this year, man. And like, how bolder can you get than a 5-4 in the Final Four? Like, that would be absolutely insane. So I definitely could see it. And like, even in Kansas, like watching the Jayhawks all year, they're a team that they kind of peaked at the right time. They had that mid-season struggle where I was like, this team's going to lose in the first round. I could see them losing in the round of 32. I could see them making a run to the Final Four and like going deep. So this year it's kind of tough to where really I think we said Gonzaga at the beginning and maybe like a Michigan. There are only so many teams that you can really count on, I think, making that deep run. Like even a Villanova, I picked them to go to the Final Four. I could see them losing in the first or second round, just like you said.
Okay, so we both have Gonzaga winning the championship. I'm in agreement with you there. We both like Kate Cunningham and Oklahoma State to be dark horses.
Yeah.
I think Illinois could be really tough. You like Villanova. I think Villanova's going to be upset early. And the last thing I will say, my last key point would be Florida State plays really tough. I like Scotty Barnes and I like FSU. And I like the culture that they've created down there. Do you have FSU going deep in yours?
I have them losing to Michigan, and what would that be, the third round?
Yeah, I believe so.
So they'd be in the Sweet 16, which I think they're definitely a tough team, and they play really hard. Like you said, they play good defense. They're a team that, like, I'm trying to think of the word, and I can't think of it, but, like, the teams that have that, like, pizzazz or whatever, they don't really have that. They're just a team that you take them at face value, and they're a tough team to play. Like, they're going to give whoever they play against a run for their money, and even they could upset a Michigan and maybe even get to the Elite Eight. But, man, looking at my bracket, like, I think Illinois is definitely one of those teams that's going to go far in the tournament. I think Texas Tech is a little bit slept on. Like, really the Big 12 in general, but also, like, a Baylor. I had Villanova beating Baylor. Baylor was undefeated for, 17, 18 games into the year. So I don't know what to make out of any of those Big 12 teams, which is also, I have Oklahoma State going the furthest as a 4 seed out of the Big 12. Like, it's just tough to predict.
Yeah. Well, at the end, we do have the same champion, and I know a lot of people are like, come on, because they're undefeated. It's like, sometimes you don't have to outthink the room. If I just think they're the best team, I think they're the best team. I know it's probably not the sexiest pick or the flashiest pick. I just think they're the best team in college basketball. And so I'm just telling you what my eyes see, when you look, what do I say, the 3 games, like the history, the statistics, and then just the eye test. Just the champions to win it all. Jordan Foote, this has been one of my favorite episodes we've recorded. Is there anything that you want to tell the audience to look out for? It could be March Madness, college, obviously college, NFL, whatever that may be.
Man, looking at my bracket one last time.
Yeah.
I have Colgate pulling off an upset. And I have them getting to that round of 32, which would be really cool. I think that Colgate, man, Jordan Burns is my dude. And then Preston at Ohio. Like, if they didn't draw Creighton in my bracket in that second round, they're a team that I could see making some damage because Preston just has them rolling on all cylinders. Like, he does everything well. He's a really tough player. I love his story. Like, anyone listening, if you don't know Jason Preston's story, go look it up. Amazing. Like, the dude averaged, it was 2 points his senior year of high school or whatever. Yeah, and worked his way all the way up. So I think this year is going to be the year of the coaching, the year of the reliable player. I think not really the star player, but the reliable player, and then the year of the underdog, I think, is something to look out for.
I do think Georgetown is going to be upset too. I haven't been impressed
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's one of them as well. I think Georgetown. But yeah, I'm excited, Jordan. For those listening, if you're just now understanding who Jordan is, where can they find you? Where can they hate at you? Send you mean messages? I know you're big on Twitter, so where can they get you there?
Man, I'm at Footnoted on everything. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Like, I don't really get on Facebook that much anymore. I think that's our generation in a nutshell. I kind of share stuff now and again, but I'm trying to get better on Instagram. I'm really bad about that. But Twitter at Footnoted, I have my messages open, so I try to respond nicely to all the mean ones. So if you have one, go ahead and send that to me as well. But man, thanks a lot for having me on, Max.
Of course, we talked a little bit about life. We talked NFL. We talked March Madness. There's definitely one for the books. Whenever you want to come on, you let me know. Until next time, Jordan Foote. We'll talk soon.